special ad hoc committee meeting, July 1st, 2024.
I call the special ad hoc committee meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Members present are Carolyn Shireman, Zion Hickman, Chris Moritz, and myself, Vicki DeShawn, Chair. I think if it's okay with the committee, I'm going to switch up here a little. And before we do public participation, if I could get a motion to approve the June 6, 2024 special ad hoc committee meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve the June 6, 2024 ad hoc special meeting committee meeting minutes.
I second.
I have a motion for Mr. Moritz, a second for Ms. Shireman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is passed. Public participation. How are you this evening, Clarissa?
Thank you.
Good.
Clarissa Slater, 5645 State Route 4. I really don't have any additional notes. I just wanted to clarify if, when participating in the ad hoc, I know it's like a unique situation since I was the one that brought my concerns back to you all, how we were wanting me to engage with this committee, in regards to public participation and time, when he was considering like what we did last committee meeting, or were you wanting to suspend the rules for the public participation limits based on concerns that were raised in email?
As far as limits, you're talking time?
Correct.
Oh.
Especially since it was more like a conversation type based.
And our rules do state that the committee chair, it is up to their discretion. And as far as I'm concerned, I have no time limit. You can speak as long as you need.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure since we had stated that like public participation is usually like someone walks up, they talk about their concerns, and then they go sit down. And I just wasn't sure what exactly you wanted me to do, because it almost seemed more like it was an open discussion or open forum. So however you would like to address that, I'm totally fine with it. We'll go sit back down. If you ask a question, I'll come back up. It doesn't really matter, being flexible. Whatever everyone's happy with, so.
Okay. So I guess you're saying that right now you have nothing more to add
Yeah.
to what you did the last time we spoke. So maybe the committee, we can do talking. And then if Mrs. Slater has anything that she wishes to say, she can interject it. Yeah, we'll just have a conversation back and forth. If I can say a few things before we start with the committee. I did a little more researching, and I found that our 111.21, which I know was one of the sections that there were some concerns on, and let me find my paper here.
Special meetings.
1121 deals with the council rules for security. And the concern there, if I'm remembering correctly, is that it talks about speaker. There's not a distinguishment between the public and the council. And I know first off that this particular section did not come in to existence until March the 1st, 2016. That was the first time that council had this section prepared and incorporated into chapter 111. And at that time, it just makes reference to speaker and the individual who refuses to, or it says subject, who refuses to relinquish the podium or disrupts the meeting. And it continues on and refers to the individual at the podium that's in 2016. Then when you come in 2020, when that particular section was amended, and that amendment was approved on September the 1st, 2020, those changes had to deal with changing the name to Sergeant at Arms, being the individual. We talked about mayor, chief of police, or his or her designee shall preside as, and then we referred to them as the Sergeant at Arms. And we made those changes throughout that section, incorporating the word Sergeant at Arms. That was the only change that was done in 2020. Then I know at the last meeting I had asked Ms. Sherry if she could recall what the previous council, what their intent was on whether 1121 dealt with just the public or if it also included council. And I know that Ms. Sherry had indicated, and let's see, I want to find it here, that she stated that they were talking about them. This was the last council. They were talking about them. They wanted it for both, but they didn't get theirs passed. Theirs didn't get finished going through all the way. It got stopped. And that is correct. They started in January 6, 2022 to amend both 111 and 113 chapters, and meetings were held throughout, but then when it came to August 4th, it stopped at a standstill, and nothing more was done after August 4th, 2022. Now I will say though that in checking the minutes back in 2022, and that would be the April 21st, that was the last time they talked about section 111.21. There was no discussion about changing or distinguishing that section 111.21 was meant for both the public and for both of council. That was not one of the items that was discussed in what they were concerned about. There were other items, but that was not one of them. So I guess that's just all I had to say, just to sort of, oh, and then at the last meeting, I had mentioned questioning about having Law Director Gernert prepare a draft. My purpose of asking for a draft was just so the committee would have something to look at, and then we could choose to scratch some stuff that, Mr. Gernert may have, or had in there, or add to. But it was decided by 3 committee members that you did not want to have him prepare a draft at this time, that you felt that we still needed to discuss the issue. So with that being said, what do you 3? Do you have anything to say? I mean, what more did you?
I don't think I have as much of an issue trying to put something in the rules and procedure to keep council itself in line. The only problem that I see is the lack of enforcement that could possibly be at the helm. The way that I see it at the moment is we could pass this through and it would be in there, but how would it be enforced? Would it even be enforced? Would be my biggest concern.
And if I may respond to Mr. Hickman's comment, I agree with you. I mean, we can have it in here, but is it going to be enforced?
Right.
I mean, we have things in here now that aren't being enforced.
Right, and I guess in a way that's kind of lack on our part, but in the same breath, we can hold ourselves accountable, but to an extent.
Now, I will say, Mr. Hickman, you mentioned rules of procedure. Now, we get a little confused because the rules of procedure, that's the document that tells citizen participation, coming up to the podium, council participation, and miscellaneous.
I think I stated rules and procedures, sorry.
Okay, then I may have misunderstood you. But the word procedure throws us off because that's what appears in, again, this document that does not go through legislation. Now, there is the Chapter 111 that's called Council, Rules of Council. And that's where I could see the confusion, but we just need to make sure that we're talking the proper document. And while you've brought that up, and I may get this a little add to the mix, I was wondering on the Chapter 111, which is where Mr. Gernert had indicated that we could add a 111.99 for, areas of discipline or what have you. Can that 111.99 not only refer to the sections that are, and I'll just say for lack of a better word, violated, that appear in Chapter 111, can it also address the rules of procedure? Because I know that, Mrs. Slater had mentioned at the last meeting that there's a number of items outlined in this. Well, this is a separate document from this, and do we need to redo the rules of procedure and have something in there that talks about enforcing those rules?
If I may.
Sure.
I was kind of thinking on that as well. And what I thought that would kind of maybe be a little bit more expedient is to reference them in the 111.
Okay.
So say like, if you're going to make it like .99, be like, I don't know how you want to use the verbiage, but something along the lines of censure, or however you're going to, censorship and discipline, I don't know what you guys want to name it. I feel like discipline's like a really hard word, but, and then say like any violations within this ordinance or this section of the ordinance, and reference to council rule and or the most updated council rule and procedure, and then that way it's kind of like encompassing. That way you wouldn't have to.
And that's the question that I'm having of, Mr. Gernert, is that something that we can do with the Chapter 111 when we prepare the 111.99, which talks about disciplining, reference the rules of procedure as well?
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, you can throw that all in, incorporate it all by reference. And then
Because I think that was my main thread of concern, and sometimes I have a hard time getting to the point, so I apologize, was that I felt like you have very good information in there, but I feel like that also doesn't tie to what's here. That makes sense, and being able to like have an accountability. And I also think that what you have in there could also tie into the one we just talked about, Sergeant at Arms.
The 111.21.
2-1. And that could reference, whatever escalations may occur based off of the rules for the public, but also if there's any like escalate. I mean, obviously, we hope no one's like fighting each other here, but you never know who will be here in the future, or what could escalate. So I'm just saying it would be nice, I'm kind of a, so what I'm looking for. I over-prepare for things, so I always expect the worst and hope for the best, so, that was kind of my thought for.
Well, just a little information for you, and I'm going to call you Clarissa. This Miss Slater and Mr. Hickman, if you guys are okay. I would rather say Zion or Carolyn. And if you're not okay, let me know. I'll still call you Mr. Gerhard. With our last, and I don't believe it was our last, it was two terms ago in our rules of procedure. We had for, let me find it here. We had for citizen participation, we had this statement. Any person making personal, impertinent or slanderous remarks, or who shall become boisterous or physically threatening to members of council, the administration, and others in attendance, while addressing council or a committee, shall be forthwith by the presiding officer barred from further audience before council or a committee, and can be removed from council chambers. I understood why that was under citizen participation, but then I question, as a citizen, why shouldn't this also be under council participation? I mean, because there was an incident that did occur with a comment, and so that change was made. So under council participation, it reiterates the same thing under citizen participation. So they're both. And I'm wondering why that can't be the same with the 11.21. That the security is also, I mean.
In the section that you're discussing, and not to interject, but about removal, I feel like that basically ties in this policy right here of the 111.21.
Right, the 111.21 gets more detailed on here's the steps that
Right.
need to be followed.
Right, but I feel like connecting those documents would be really important, or connecting the 111 to the policies and procedures would be.
Now, I will say this, that if you look on documents on demand, and if you look at the rules of procedure as well, the rules of procedure refers to Chapter 111 and Chapter 113, and they are attached on documents on demand. It's one document, if you will, so to speak. I mean, the rules of procedure is passed by council as a whole, just by voice vote. The other is done through legislative, and then we pass. But I guess I'll say two documents, the rules and then the ordinance, they're, well, I don't even really want to say ordinance, I want to say the chapter. So there's really three, the Chapter 111 and the Chapter 113, and the rules of procedure. We do combine them on our documents on demand, or they're supposed to be combined on documents on demand, and I'm pretty sure they are.
Yeah, I guess what I mean is like having like I know that references the 111, but I think it would be pertinent to have the rules and procedure referenced in the 111, vice versa. Do you see what I'm saying?
Understand?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
That just like joins the document so that it makes it more carry weight, I guess.
And are you thinking that you want to reference rules of procedure in 111 in its own little section, or will referencing it in the 111.99 suffice? The 111.99 being where we do our penalties, yeah, penalties, what have you.
So
This-
on both, not to cut you off.
No, excuse me, you go ahead.
On both sections, they have the cross references below where they list out all of what's in each section. So in both of those cross references, just at the bottom of
Oh, okay. What are you looking at here,
just
ordinance?
the ordinance.
Okey-doke, got it.
So at the bottom of both 111 and 113, in the cross reference section, you could, put a little blurb that says, see the Bucyrus City Council rules of procedure.
Do you see that, Clarissa? Do you have ordinance? Okay.
And that would, so you're not only going to include it in the rules of procedure referencing chapter 111 and 113.
Great.
But in both of those cross-references back to the rules of procedure, and then if we create a 111.99, it would also include a reference that all of the rules of procedure can be enforced through these procedures. And I don't have it with me, but so the 111.21 talks about discipline and removal and all of that good stuff. And it doesn't differentiate between members of council and members of the public, which I think is probably important to do to create a differentiation. But Ohio Revised Code also already has how you would remove a member of council, and they have specific voting procedures that we would have to follow. I think it's the 2/3 vote of all of the other members of council. So it can't just be, the president or the chairperson instructing the sergeant at arms. We would actually have to go through with a voice vote.
And it's just a removal from the meeting?
From the current meeting, right.
Correct, got it.
Right. And then the caveat, if we begin to have fist fights in these meetings, God forbid, but cops are always allowed to enforce or prevent illegal activity, right? So no fist fightings in the gallery. We don't have to vote to have you removed if you're creating what's it saying, one of those, somewhere.
It says disruptive activity.
Yeah. If you're disrupting the meeting and then we can't proceed because there's currently a fist fight going on, obviously we don't have to give you your 3 warnings and have a vote by 2/3 majority to, remove people. But you can throw the language in there on office or removal of members of council, clean up the 121 or 111.21 so that it specifically refers to general public, because there is a different procedure that we have to use on elected officials. And that, in my mind, would kind of clean up those issues of questions and clean things up better.
So instead of on 111.21,
Yeah.
instead of saying any speaker, you want to change that to, I thought any speaker pretty much, I thought, sums it up, but you should even be more
Yeah,
inclusive.
actually put any member of the public addressing council, or speaker,
I thought any speaker would be
Does-
good enough, but
right.
I guess if somebody wants to cause trouble out there that's not at the podium, that could be an issue too, because it does say at podium.
Right.
Right.
And then, during committee meetings at times, you have the ability to get up and enter your opinion as a individual citizen and not as a public, a elected official. And so while you're speaking as an individual person, you can be treated under the 111.21, I'll get it right. But theoretically, if you're being loud and boisterous and cannot be controlled, but you're sitting in these chairs, then that would be a point of order and proceed under the, I'm asking for this member to be removed based upon their behavior.
So with the 111.21, we could have the law director rewrite or revise the verbiage where it refers to the individual.
I have a question.
Okay, can you let me finish here? Where it refers to the public who's at the podium, and then also reference the procedure if disruption occurs within the council itself.
Yeah.
Carolyn?
What if the person is just naturally loud and boisterous?
Are you referring to
Do you have
anybody?
any?
Oh, no, certainly
You're
not.
referring-
Yes, I'm referring to myself. What if I'm just this way? You're going to punish me for being loud and boisterous?
Well, I think it's also unceasingly.
Describe that to me, because I can be that too.
So if Mrs. Deshawn is running this meeting,
Mhm.
and she says, Carolyn, hold on, we have to get to this. And you continue ranting and raving
Oh,
about.
I will be quiet for that. But once-
Exactly.
But once I get up there, and I get loud and boisterous, you know, which is my character, no filter. How you gonna punish me? You see, this is rabbit chasing rabbit. I see what you're all's doing, but we could just keep going in different scenarios, using different and I'm putting myself out there. Because I'm really nice and quiet, and I listen, but I can be boisterous too.
You can, and I don't think that that's the conduct that we're trying to worried about. I mean, I think it's when we have multiple members or whatever, and we're incapable of moving past whatever we want to argue about at that point. But I will also say, none of this has been in the rules, and we have conducted business in the city of Bucyrus. I'm going to get it wrong, but it's over 200 because we had the bicentennial, so 200 and something.
So why are we doing it now?
Well, it's in Ohio Revised Code, right? So it's not, I think that to clean this up, and because this is open now, it's the opportunity, it's open, we're discussing it, we've got the Ad-Hoc Committee, if we're going to make changes, now is the time. So I think timing is based upon the fact that we've had some difficult meetings. We've also already opened this thing up, and it's open, so we're there. We might as well fix it while we're
And I
there.
voted not to open it up.
Yeah, democracy's
So
not for.
what did that mean?
Oh, yeah, you got the vote. But my point being, if we're going to do something, now's the time.
Well, I'm
Are we
just trying to cover myself.
I get it, but are we ever going to actually go that route? I don't know.
Right.
And it also takes a supermajority. So out of the people, I assume that you're not going to vote to censure yourself. That just seems
Well, of course not.
counterintuitive. You might, who knows? But that means 5/6 of the remaining members, and that's that's a high majority.
Yeah, so I'll be here for a while.
I think you'll
I'm
be fine.
safe.
You can be boisterous.
Thank you. I know, Mr. Gernard, I love you.
If I
And I'm
may.
just boisterous to everybody, not just,
I get it.
it's just me.
Carissa?
If I may, I think it's really important to point out too, like, I'm not obviously in council. I just feel like, I think was probably one of the largest turnovers
Yeah.
that we've had,
Yeah.
right? And I think we had this conversation. Everybody's new at this, and it's not anyone trying to, it's just making sure that, there was some problems, and I know we're moving past it, but it's just to ensure that nothing happens like that again. And it's not even trying to remove someone. It's just trying to make sure everyone is on the same page and understands. And it might be that, things change. I mean, why do we revise any bill then, or any ordinance, or things change, technology changes, people change. It's just nice to have a outline of what is acceptable and not acceptable, and what you'll do about that, instead of bickering or being upset with each other.
Zion?
I think to that point, me being probably the youngest person who's ever served up here, I think having that protection for future councils is probably prominent, just in case something were to happen, that it's there. I just don't really see this council really doing a whole lot with it, but to have that there for other councils, for other generations, for this council is probably important.
And I think what's the comment? We want to be proactive rather than
Yes.
reactive? Is that
Yes.
the comment? Carolyn?
And me being the oldest on council and having this for 200 years, I think the chances, I mean, there's been worse days and worse councils than us, and we're still here. I just find this ridiculous. I'm sorry, I just find this utterly ridiculous. We're trying to change something, it's like, I mean, this is just ridiculous to me. I mean, we could be working on something much more important than our rules of procedure, because they weren't followed when I was told to leave a meeting.
And we did, we talked about that.
Yeah, so, and it wasn't then, and I'm still here, and I'm on council, so I just think this is ridiculous. I'm sorry.
Okay?
Well, If I may, that's actually, your incident's a perfect example. The procedures weren't followed. There was no other recourse than to go and file with the probate court. So my point is that if everyone else disagreed with what happened that day and you shouldn't have been removed, then they could make a public statement or at least make a gesture to say, hey, we disagree with this, and have a vote. So you can see where that lies.
See, now, I swore I wasn't going to say nothing. I'm not going to say nothing. I won't say nothing. I'm going to keep my cool. Because this goes farther than this too. I would be taking it out to the people that come to the council at 2 different times and harassed me, laughed at me, made fun of me, and then went home and put it on Facebook in the council meeting post, and I was called stupid and I was made fun of by the people out there. And Clithery, I think you were one of them, because I have the post.
Yeah,
So see,
and that was in
so it
reaction where a
doesn't
police
matter.
report was filed because you were engaging in stalking behavior.
Who was in stalking behavior?
Do you think it's appropriate for a council member to take photos of people and then post it on the web that you're taking photos of the public because they're raising concerns about how things are occurring in city council?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
What I'm saying is, this is the point. The point is not appropriate.
Do you have a picture stating that I did that?
Yeah, I do.
Well, could you show it?
Yeah, you can go ahead and request it from the police department. A police report has been filed.
And anybody can take pictures. You took one of me sitting in my car.
Yeah, where you admitted that you were engaging in strange behavior by taking photos of me because I was talking to a specific council member.
No, I didn't take strange pictures of you.
Okay,
All right, that's fine, that's
so
a disagreement,
both-
but
If I-
Exactly, but I know what
Carolyn,
I was doing.
If I can, as the chairman, I'm going to ask
This
that
is
the
why
two
I-
of you, okay,
We will not never get along because I feel everything she's up here for
okay, Carolyn,
is me.
okay,
And I'm going to fight her.
okay,
It's my right.
we're going to end that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chair.
This ad hoc committee is done every time we get new council in. This is always done to see if we need to redo anything or add or subtract anything else. That's why we're doing this. You may be thinking it's wasting time. Maybe it is, but times change, things change, technology changes. I think it's a good idea to do this. But that's where I stand on that. As far as that goes, but I think it's a good idea to do it, to discuss if we do need to change anything. Pretty much where I had.
Well, and I know that we had our ordinance number 11-2024. I mean, it had its 3rd reading. Or it could have had its 3rd reading. And then, Clarissa came and, mentioned her concerns. Now, I guess I could have done one of 2 things. I could have said, thank you. We appreciate you telling us your concerns, but we have our ordinance ready and we're having the 3rd reading. I chose not to do that. I mean, we have a citizen who has come and expressed a concern, and that's why I felt, hey, we need to hold off on the ordinance. And I believe at least 3 of us were in agreement, to do that. And I felt that, hey, someone's brought something to our attention. Let's listen. Let's hear what needs to be said. And then at that time, which we're doing now, we, again, listen. And then we as a committee decide whether we want to, change this particular ordinance and then re-present it, to council. And I think from the discussion that we've had, at least I believe we're going to have a majority here stating that we do feel there needs to be some changes made to this. And unfortunately, we didn't think about that when we were...
I mean, and I appreciate you listening to my concerns. We had a conversation for over an hour after the last meeting, and I laid out my intent and what I thought and what I thought would happen bringing that concern up, and so far I've been right. But again, like I said, as I addressed in the last meeting that was held, that this is not directed towards anybody. We can have our personal disagreements, and you can disagree with that, but I am publicly stating the reason I brought this up was because of the points that I made previously, is that you guys are young, not young maybe in age, but young as in experience, and I don't know anything either, but I've had concerns too. I've had concerns for years, and recently, yes, I just became active and coming and voicing those, but I do really appreciate, especially Vicki, taking the time to talk to me and listen to those concerns.
Well, as I mentioned before, you know, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I mean, so, you know, you go for it, and people are upset, and you don't go for it, people are upset. And
That with how much time that she's put into this and how much time we've spent looking at it and discussing it, it's worth talking about.
oh,
It
most
is.
definitely.
I think that's the important part here, is that both parties have used about an equal amount of time to look and discuss. It's clearly been something worth discussing and looking at.
Now, in defense of Carolyn's statements, were like rabbits chasing rabbits, or I think that was your comment that you made. I'll have to say I agree, because we do have rules that we aren't following. And now I'm hoping, and I'm hoping with all this discussion that, okay, we all need to, because it is the council president or the chair, committee chair, to enforce the rules, as well as if the council president chooses not to, we as committee members have the right to also enforce, a rule if the president, hasn't,
Right.
brought it to one's attention. So, I guess with that being said, do we feel that we've had enough discussion this evening that we could ask the law director to prepare a draft, amend this ordinance and adding the verbiage that, we've talked about, especially on the 111.21 and,
Yes.
In my opinion, we do now, yes.
okay? And then what our thought is, we'll have the law director prepare a draft. Once that draft is prepared, he'll send that to Miranda, and he, will send a copy to me. And then Miranda will send it to the committee members, because I want everyone to have time to look it over. I don't want to come, well, I guess with this being an ad hoc, it's not like it's a regular scheduled committee meeting. But I don't want to schedule a committee meeting and then come to that meeting and have the draft on our table. I want this committee, as well as Clarissa, to have a copy of the draft, for them, for all of us to look over. And then once that draft's been presented to the committee and to Clarissa, then we can schedule another ad hoc committee meeting to see how council feels about the draft, as well as Clarissa and any other audience people that want to participate. Does that sound okay to you, Clarissa? Do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to present tonight? Again, once we have the draft, I just love drafts, because then you have something to look
A
at.
reference
I'm a
point,
paper
yeah.
person. And then you can read it, and then it's like, oh gosh, we need to, yeah.
My only other, I don't know if it would be with the 111
Okay.
or not, but I think we kind of touched on this when we had a talk after the meeting, last meeting. Is if there's any way, and I don't even know how this works with having all of you in one space,
Oh,
but.
yes, I know what you're gonna say, go ahead.
Maybe having a workshop on what you adopt and just policy and procedure, especially, like, just as a refresh, like an educational refresh, which I know sounds really boring. But I think it would help, I think it would help each individual understand their rights as a member of council, and just a refresh on what you're allowed to do if you don't agree with what's going on during the meeting.
Talking like Robert's rules, a refresher course.
Even like,
Or a workshop.
like we talked about point avoiders, I've heard people voice how they don't like something's happening currently in the meeting. It could be the chairperson, the president, whomever, and they're able to know the tools that they have to use to address that problem instead of letting it fester or what have you.
And workshops.
Yeah, there's an exception. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
So that's something that you could look into us?
yeah, I'll get back to you.
Into it for us?
Would you be willing to teach the Roberts rules?
We've already had a little discussion, Clarissa and I. Someone who we
Got you.
know that has taught Robert's rules. And we haven't approached that individual yet, but that or her mom,
That's who I learned it from, so,
yeah.
Who is it?
the Welshes.
I would feel more comfortable having somebody
Oh,
outside.
Yeah.
I was just joking.
Oh, what do you mean you were just joking?
You can do it. You can do it. But yeah,
Why
somebody.
don't you do it, Brian?
Yeah, you want to do it?
I got
I'm
the
just joking.
Who else?
Robert's rules in plain English. Just hidden under the
It was
desk.
like a little mini.
She's got a little cubby hole, it just hides there.
Okay.
Can I say something with that?
Yes, Carolyn.
I think this is going way overboard. Come on, our term is only 2 years. And after 2 years, if you're lucky, you'll get voted back in. So what's the deal with the workshop? We have the ordinances and everything on paper. If we want to learn anything, read your ordinances that you got on paper.
Well, I personally would like to attend a workshop.
Not
And that's okay, and I guess that will be up to the individual council person, whether he or she chooses to attend, and that's fine if you don't want to
I
attend.
just think this has been blown completely out of proportion.
Zion,
I think it's probably a smart idea, just in case, like, if any of us were to get reelected after this term, that we have that knowledge under our belt to move forward.
You have it in your ordinances.
Yes,
Read
but
your ordinances.
I do read my ordinances, but I do not have an extended period of time to read Robert's rules in extension. I think having a workshop for just a brief of Robert's rules would probably be a great idea to have.
I'm assuming at this point, most all of us at least have the book to look at. I know I do. I know you do, and you do. You do. Don't know if you do yet or not, but.
Yeah, I do, but like I said, I don't.
Yeah, I know. How much time we got for a regular job and everything, plus
Right.
this. Saying that, we're talking about the whole council, not just the committee.
Right.
yes, the whole
Okay.
council would be at the workshop.
That wasn't brung up, the whole council.
Yes,
Brung up, but it would be
right.
the whole council, okay.
Correct.
And if I may, I get it that
I'm just one person and whatever, you guys have listened to me and been more than gracious, so I appreciate it. But my only thought is if it's a skill like anything else, the more you use it, the better you are at it. And everything's recorded nowadays. Like the videos are recorded, they're clipped, they're shared, whatever. It would just be beneficial if a concern is brought up that I feel like practicing it or knowing what to do when that's brought up would be, you know, instead of sitting there like, oh, I need to read Robert's rules and a situation is unfolding in front of you, you would have that reference and the skill because you've practiced it instead of, you know, whenever that occurs and deer in the headlights kind of thing, so.
In my experience, it's no different than a machine going down and you not knowing how to fix it that second. If you have that knowledge to know how to fix it, you don't need anyone to help you. You just know how to do it. That knowledge is important.
All right. Well, and I think with that being said, we would like to request for you to prepare draft legislation. And then once it's been given to the committee and Ms. Slater to Clarissa to look over, then we'll schedule another ad hoc committee meeting.
That's also gonna be available to the public too on documents on demand probably, I'm assuming, or not? No, we have to bring it up here first, don't we?
Well, when Miranda places the agenda on the documents on demand, she
There you
will
go.
also have a copy of the draft ordinance that Mr. Gernert has prepared that we will be discussing at the committee meeting or special committee meeting that we'll be scheduling. Yeah.
Cool.
And, that's always, has to be put on 24 hours. But Miranda's been having those on earlier, so time for the committee member, or time for the public to also.
That's what I was concerned about,
Yep.
making sure,
Most
because
definitely.
there's a lot to this one.
Okay, so if there's nothing more to say, then, there's no sense to do, we've already done public participation. Do I have a motion to, or I guess I just say, I'm going to adjourn the special ad hoc committee meeting at 6:49 PM.